Welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Axion.
I'm Scint.
And we are continuing our exploration of Castlevania, Circle of the Moon, and our discussion of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
So we've talked a fair bit about, say, like the ethics of Victor's experimentation, but we haven't really talked about the quote science behind it. Because as we have mentioned multiple times, Frankenstein is basically the mother of science fiction. So the creation of the creature was done with the understanding that people had at the time, which was, in this case, lightning can do anything. It's a limitless power source from the sky, it's super powerful, and we don't fully understand it, so who's to say it can't do this kind of stuff?
I wonder if I should switch over to Lightning Whip.
Maybe. But we get to see this fairly early on when Victor's talking about his childhood. When I was about 15 years old, we had retired to our house near Belrive when we witnessed the most violent and terrible thunderstorm. It advanced from behind the mountains of Jura, and the thunder burst at once with frightful loudness from various quarters of the heavens. I remained while the storm lasted, watching its progress with curiosity and delight. As I stood at the door, on a sudden I beheld a stream of fire issue from an old and beautiful oak, which had stood about 20 yards from our house, and as soon as the dazzling light vanished, the oak had disappeared, and nothing remained but a blur. We found the tree shattered in a singular manner. It was not splintered by the shock, but entirely reduced to thin ribbons of wood. I never beheld anything so utterly destroyed. The catastrophe of this tree excited my extreme astonishment, and I eagerly inquired of my father the nature and origin of thunder and lightning. He replied, electricity, describing at the same time the various effects of that power. He constructed a small electrical machine and exhibited a few experiments. He also made a kite with a wire and string, which drew down that fluid from the clouds. So only a couple of years before Victor goes off to school, he becomes utterly fascinated with electricity and lightning. And this is ultimately what he chooses to use to bring his creation to life. At the time, the study of electricity would have been known as galvanism.
He mentions the whole kite in a thunderstorm thing that is culturally so strongly associated with, like, Benjamin Franklin. Would this have been around that time or a little later? I'm blanking on my historical dates of relevance.
Franklin was around during the age of the American Revolution, the conclusion of which came in the 1780s, about 30 years before the publication of Frankenstein. So, and Franklin was not an unknown figure in Europe. He did a lot of diplomatic work, so it's not impossible that Mary Shelley would have been familiar with the name. But yeah, I'm not sure if the mental image of Kite in the Storm is the same, or if it's just like shared creation. It could be. I don't know for sure.
Right. Ooh, free heal. Oh, seriously?
This is going well.
The game dumped me back in the starting area. Well, now I have to get back to that zone. So, we have for the time, little properly understood natural phenomena, with a basic understanding that it can do things, and therefore something of an extrapolation that it can do anything. This is the kind of thing that sci-fi writers have always latched onto for use in their plots, because it makes reasonable, practical sense to most readers. We have this thing that we do not necessarily fully understand, but a person of scientific knowledge might, and might be able to make use of it in ways that we do not currently fully fathom. Therefore, it makes sense to extrapolate beyond what is currently known in a sci-fi story to what might be possible in the future by a more knowledgeable person, or a society with more resources available. And you can see this throughout sci-fi even today. Like, there is a science fiction slash... I wouldn't call it space fantasy, but it's not like... It's very soft sci-fi. That I'm particularly personally fond of, but it's been a while since I've read one of the books, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now. And their whole thing is that they achieved faster-than-light space travel via shifting through quantum entanglement. Now, quantum stuff is something that is barely understood in the best of cases by the common person nowadays. It's extremely complicated science that involves a lot of very difficult math and doesn't jive completely with standard day-to-day physics, which is actually a big problem for scientists right now, because trying to make physics and quantum work together is a very messy process.
There's always quantum. Thank you, Sir Terry.
So, pardon me. So for the current sci-fi writer, it's a very easy, in fact, in some cases, I'd say lazy, looking at you, Avengers, explanation for why weird science stuff works. I'll put the info for that story I was thinking of in the description and editing it in post, because I cannot remember it right now because it's been a while since I read it, and they were Kindle books, so I can't just go peek at my library. I'd have to boot up the Kindle and then search through the titles that I have, and I have a lot of stuff on there, and it would take a while. And it's not super important that I have the name right now anyway, I can just put it in post. But to get back to my point, this series uses quantum mechanics and things like entanglement and like Planck scale physics and things like that as an explanation for why its sci-fi works, with no real necessity for a regard of how, if that's how it would actually work, because that's really not the point. It's not the kind of sci-fi that's trying to predict the future. It's not like some of Asimov's work, for example, that is all about trying to estimate where we're going to be technologically in a few decades or century or two.
It's been a while since I read Foundation.
Yeah, it's not like that. It is definitely very much softer sci-fi. It's more for entertainment than education. It's just the story of some spacefaring astronauts and the alien society they meet on their journeys after discovering successful faster-than-light flight. So, with that in mind, it's not incredibly important that their science be 100% accurate. It's just there as a set piece. And that's kind of the same boat that Frankenstein is in. I don't think Shelley was incredibly interested in being 100% scientifically accurate. I just think she wanted something that was understandable and semi-believable for her readers. But not so unrealistic and fantastical as to break immersion when dealing with a story that pitches its character as having discovered something scientifically relevant. Victor is using technology and lightning and energy in a strange way, but he's not throwing fireballs and pretending to be Gandalf. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say there's another aspect to focus on for the inspiration for Frankenstein, which is to say that, yes, this came from the whole let's write a scary story contest at Lord Byron's Vacation Hellscape, but Shelley was inspired by a nightmare that she had. So science fiction not only explores, as we've mentioned, technologies and procedures that we don't fully understand or are only beginning to, it's also a way to process societal anxieties.
Mm-hmm. And that is something that we as a culture have always done through stories. We have always used telling stories and sharing stories and making euphemisms and tales of our experiences as a way to share our experiences and our concerns and fears and wants and needs with the rest of society. Okay, so there we go. This is something humanity has always done. We have always told stories to one another. We have always shared our concerns through retellings of our experiences, both real and fantastical. It's a part sharing stories is a part of the human experience. And sure, there's always going to be, like, differences in how cultures tell stories, the kinds of stories they tell, the kinds of demonstrations and characters and story themes and all that sort of thing that they choose to focus on by majority. But it's something that every culture has always done since cultures were a thing.
Yeah, and honestly, it's advances in our understanding that lead to works to be no longer fully considered science fiction. Like, most people, I don't think, consider Frankenstein science fiction if they read it as it is today, because we know lightning doesn't work that way. It kind of comes across as more fantasy. Plus, Victor never goes into detail about how exactly he does it. We're left to honestly infer that he used lightning because of his earlier fascination with the subject, and that, well, it's mysterious enough that it could plausibly have been understood to have pulled off what he did at the time. But, yeah, most people just think, oh yeah, it's proto-horror. And with some remembering, oh yeah, no, it is actually the first science fiction. But it's just interesting how time changes our perspective on things, I think.
Yep. It's a cultural touchstone in a lot of ways, and that includes how it's interpreted and how it's been reinterpreted, which is how we end up with movie Frankenstein being such a cultural monolith, despite and being so well known more for the happenings in said story in the movie than for what actually happens in the book. Alright, time for phase 2. Oh, I forgot about this.
Welp.
Yeah, death in this game is weird. Oh, he slowed me down. And I'm out of
Health.
well, that too, but mostly magic was what I was complaining about.
Try lightning. Lightning's magic, basically.
Heh. Oh, wait, I had a heart item. Haha, got him! And got 2 levels out of it.
Nice. This seems like a good place to pause.
Yep, I am fine with pausing after bidding death farewell.
Bye, Death. Go speak in all caps, please.
Remind me again how the little horse-shaped ones move.
Later.
See you next time.